So a question that I see come up pretty often when folks are talking about SaaS or when they're trying to figure out what SaaS product should I build, and especially for beginners, the first SaaS product that they build, does it make more sense to build a B2C application or a B2B application? I definitely had to think about this a lot when I was deciding what product to build for my first SaaS application, and now I'm currently building DinnerBee, and if you haven't seen any of those devlogs, I will link them above and below. But like I said, I had to think about this a lot when I was trying to figure out what I was going to build. I ended up landing on B2C, but I want to go over 7 different things that I considered when thinking about the two, and really just talking about the main differences that I see between building B2B and B2C applications. Definitely stick around until the end of the video because I'll give kind of my exact thought process when I was thinking through all of these things I'm about to go over and how I ultimately landed on B2C. But yeah, let's hop right into the first aspect of all of this. So first off, and this may be the most obvious, is that there is a real clear difference between who the customers are in these two routes. So obviously in the B2B realm, we're going to be selling our product directly to business owners, and for B2C, could just be any Joe Schmo on the street we could be selling our application to. Obviously, it's probably a bit more specific than that. It's not going to be everybody, but it'll be a much larger demographic of people in the B2C realm. I just want to point that out because it does kind of influence the rest of the things that I'm going to talk about, especially when it goes into validating our idea or trying to sell our product as well. It's really just going to help us to have a clearer picture of exactly who our customers are, and it's going to change the way that we talk to them. It's going to change the way that we set up our landing pages, and it really just will influence a whole lot of parts of our application. So with that out of the way, I do want to jump into the next point, which is in both of these routes, it will be helpful to validate our idea in some regard before we start building. And I think that this step doesn't have to be too much different between B2C and B2B. The really main difference here is that the platforms where your customers hang out are likely going to be a lot different. So when we're talking about B2C, you might be building, like for example, in my case, I'm building an application for folks in a relationship. This is for couples who are trying to plan out their meals throughout the week. And so my customers, most likely they're going to be online somewhere, obviously. But in order to validate my idea, which admittedly I didn't really do a whole lot of this, is going to be mostly on platforms like TikTok or Reddit, or just other places that couples might hang out or folks who are in a relationship. But if we're talking about selling a B2B application, if we're going to do some validation for our app beforehand, likely these business owners are going to be on different platforms. They might be on Facebook in different niche Facebook groups. They could be on LinkedIn, or you might be able to reach out to them just via email if you're able to just cold email a bunch of different people. If you're using paid advertising to do your validation strategy, this actually might not end up being too different, but you really just got to figure out where your potential customers are hanging out and go to them. So I think a lot of the times in B2C and B2B, those people are going to be on different platforms. In addition to validating your idea, I think that there will be some stark differences when you end up selling and trying to market your application. So if we're talking about a B2C application, and I've talked about this in some of my other videos, so I'll leave a card up to the different marketing strategies that I'm planning on using for DinnerBee. But so DinnerBee is a B2C application, and so I'm planning on using various methods on social media to promote my platform. This is going to include user-generated content on TikTok, YouTube influencers, other TikTok influencers, maybe Instagram influencers, and that strategy is likely going to be a whole lot different than if I were building a B2B application. I think there is potentially some merit in finding influencers for B2B applications as well, but you really have to make sure that whatever influencer you're using to do that has an audience of business members who your product is trying to help solve for them. And I think that's just kind of a lot less common than just a general influencer. Like for example, I'm planning on reaching out to folks who do food content or do couples content. So if you're building a B2B application, those strategies might not work out super well for you. And I really do think that it is important to come up with some kind of a loose marketing strategy. It doesn't have to be a whole planned out thing up front, but you do want to have some idea of how you're going to market your product before you even start building it. So maybe you're really good on social media, and that just might make a lot more sense for you to build a B2C application because you'll have an easier time, or you might enjoy marketing it more than a B2B application where I don't know, you might be running Facebook ads for that. You might be doing a lot of cold outreach. And if those things don't inspire you a whole lot, you might not end up doing any marketing for it and you're not going to make any sales. So definitely just have those things in mind before you start building, and know that there will be some pretty stark differences when it comes to marketing if you choose B2C versus B2B. This is loosely related to marketing as well, but I do want to go over the fact that when you're selling a B2B application, it's honestly a lot easier to quantify the value that a user is receiving than in B2C applications. That's because a lot of times if you're building a B2B application, whatever you're building is like explicitly there to help them make more money. And that is a quantifiable number that you can then use in further marketing efforts. Like, hey, the average business owner saves X amount of dollars using this platform, or they save X amount of time. And that's a great piece of marketing material for you to use going forward. Even more than that though, if your application, your B2B application is a monthly subscription, for example, it can be a lot easier to justify the monthly cost for that business owner versus if you have a B2C application, like it might not be as easy to understand how much value you're exactly getting from it. For my application Dinnerbee, I think users will definitely get a lot of value out of it, and I'm trying to quantify it in a way that is similar to a B2B application. And I'm going to try to quantify this by using numbers like how much time they're able to save by going to the grocery store maybe once or twice a week instead of 3 to 4 times a week. Also quantifying the potential savings of a user going to the grocery store and buying and cooking their own meals instead of going out to eat. But what I'm trying to get at here is that for a B2C application, you kind of have to reach a bit more and try and find numbers that will justify the cost for a user, as opposed to a B2B application. Those numbers might be a bit more obvious. Ultimately, this goes into customer retention. If you are able to show a business owner exactly how much money you're saving them every single month, it's going to be a lot easier to retain that customer. Whereas if you have some kind of like made up value that a B2C application might have, it's going to be harder to keep them long term. Okay, switching gears away from marketing and validation and all of that. This topic is about something that I see kind of floating around a lot. I've heard a lot of folks say that in other videos and in articles that I've read, but there is this concept that if you're building your first SaaS application, you should probably build a B2C application. The thought here is that it is easier potentially to build something from your own life that you're able to solve an inefficiency or just something that you would like improved in your own life, and kind of just make a whole application based off of that one thing. And I'll be perfectly honest, this is what I'm doing. This was something that it was an inefficiency for my girlfriend and I was like, hey, I could just build this for us, and potentially other people would get use out of it as well. But I don't think that this has to be a steadfast rule in all scenarios. It is absolutely possible for a first-time SaaS builder to build a B2B application and potentially to do well. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I don't necessarily think that you're building your first SaaS application, so it has to be this B2C, and then you can venture into B2B. There might be more of a learning curve if you jump straight into the B2B realm, especially if you're not super familiar with those marketing tactics. But if there is a business niche that you are familiar with, I don't think there should be anything stopping you from building that first. Something else that I see a lot is that B2C applications tend to be mobile applications and B2B tend to be web applications. I don't think this is necessarily true in all scenarios. It definitely isn't. For example, I'm building a B2C web application, and there are definitely B2B mobile applications as well. So if that is a limiting factor to you, maybe you only want to build web, you can definitely do that in B2C or B2B. The last thing that I want to touch on is there a stark difference in the revenue cap for B2C applications versus B2B? And a business term that summarizes this pretty well is the TAM, or total addressable market. And for a B2B application, a lot of the times you're going to be building something that's pretty hyper specific to a set of business owners who are, in one specific business sector, and it solves a single problem for them very well. More likely than not, this total addressable market, or TAM, is going to be rather small. Most likely there won't be hundreds of thousands of potential business owners for you to sell your product to, which does potentially put a revenue cap on the amount of money that this application can make. That being said, a lot of the times B2B applications can be sold for a higher price point, because like I said before, they are specifically saving money for business owners, and therefore you're able to charge more for that value. On the other hand, in the B2C realm, my TAM is essentially people who have a roommate, or people who are in a relationship or in a couple and need to cook with another person. That is significantly larger, which is nice in the sense that we have a lot of people that we can potentially market to, but it also likely means that there are more competitors in the space. I probably can't charge as much as I would for a B2B application. In my scenario, definitely not. But it also potentially means that there is a very high revenue cap for what I would be able to accomplish. I'm not planning on having this be $1 million app or anything like that, but it is nice to know that the potential for, unlimited users is there in my market. So that's going to wrap up all of the things that I kind of considered when I was choosing between B2B and B2C, and kind of just the main stark differences between the two. But really what it came down to for me when I chose to build a B2C application as my first SaaS is I wanted to lower the risk amount as much as possible. I do still work full time and I make these videos, and I wanted to do this on the side and use this as a base for future SaaS endeavors, keep on learning and learning and learning. So in order to reduce the risk as much as possible, I definitely just wanted to build something that I knew I was going to use anyway. So even if nobody else ends up using it or buying it, I still have something that my girlfriend and I are able to use day in and day out and make our lives a whole lot better. Like I said, this will also kind of just be a practice run and a way for me to gather a bunch of data that I can use in my future endeavors. So I'm definitely curious if you are building a SaaS application right now. Leave a comment down below. Are you building a B2B app, a B2C? Is this your first attempt? Have you built a few different applications before? Definitely let me know down in the comments. If you are new around here, please consider subscribing. I make all kinds of videos on SaaS, devlogs, videos like this, and just other software topics in general. So if you're into that, leave a like and definitely subscribe. But I really appreciate you staying all the way through to the end of this video. Thanks a bunch, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.